Welcome back to Fast Market. I'm Diane King Hall at the New York Stock Exchange alongside Kevin Hinks. He's over at the SBUX. Time now for our cash tag segment where we're highlighting Starbucks ahead of its earnings this afternoon. Joining us now is Landon Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio. Landon, obviously we've got Starbucks in focus today. This is the quarter where we'll want to find out more about the road ahead given the changes Brian Niccol is putting in place. The stock is already up year to date. What are you looking to hear from Starbucks, Landon?
I think it's all about what changes are coming. I think we know a lot of those, but how are the consumers reacting to that? I think we're all expecting a positive reaction, and that's probably why the stock's up about 15% in the last month. I mean, it is moving high quickly, but that was after a bit of a sell-off as well. So we're kind of about where we were right before and right after that last earnings report. So stock's kind of flat if you look at that, even though it's been pretty volatile. When you look at all the potential changes coming, I mean, it's basically like, Niccol took a Starbucks customer from 8 or 10 years ago, put them in a time machine to today and said, what's different? And they said, you know what, everything's plastic cups. Let's go back to ceramic. Let's start writing names on cups now. Let's bring back the free refills. Let's put the condiment bar out there. Let's get rid of all the seedy people hanging around, bothering people, vaping and all that. And he's just implementing all that stuff. I mean, it's very common sense, but over the course of the COVID lockdowns and since then, they've kind of got away from all of that. They've been very focused on transactions and not so much focused on the feeling that you get as a consumer. And that's they're selling coffee at extremely premium prices, so it can't just be about the coffee. It's got to be about the feeling that the consumer has, and I think they're getting back to that. So that. I'm in favor of all these changes that he's making. As a shareholder, I would think that this is definitely going to be positive. When we look at the data on them, though, it's not happened yet, frankly. I mean, across the board, the data coming in for Starbucks is still fairly bearish. So really, it's just about the future. Like, what are we going to see in the future? For example, here, the app usage. This is really nasty. I mean, we've got the lowest month of app usage in 3 years for Starbucks here, and down over 50% on a year-over-year basis. So people are using the app way less. Their website is down significantly. That one's down 24%, and some of their competition is up. So it's not like this big move across the industry where people are, going away from these brands. They're not. They're just going away from Starbucks. And you can see here's an outlier, and it's Starbucks is on the wrong side of this chart. All of these others are doing fairly well. Even Dunkin' is plus 9%. Starbucks at negative 24 is just on the wrong side of things. So I think that we are expecting a bad report. I think a lot of the investing community is expecting a bad report. And really, it's all about the future. What is going to change with the new CEO? How long are we going to have to wait for great numbers to start coming in? So this is kind of a tricky one to play because I believe a lot of the expectation is low and it's just about the future. So maybe, the numbers that come in aren't as relevant or aren't as important to investors as were the projections or the hype talk that comes in from the CEO.
Landon, it's interesting that LikeFolio's data points out what I kind of believe. Everyone believes that the long-term outlook for Starbucks is probably positive, right? Brian Niccol fixed Taco Bell. He fixed Chipotle. Everyone expects him to fix Starbucks, but not necessarily now, right? Not necessarily this quarter, as he's making some pretty big changes. You saw the news today, 2 top executives leaving the company. I'm sure that was more of a force out and more of a parting of ways. So I think these changes, and he's got labor inflation issues, he's got competition issues, he's got input cost issues. He's trying to bring back that local feel to the Starbucks, and will he get there? I think he eventually, here's what we can trust, Landon. Brian Niccol will figure it out. It's just a matter of how long it will take him to figure it out. He's a great leader, we know that, but this is not going to be a small 1-quarter job, Landon.
No, absolutely not. I think, and this run up over the last month, I think a lot of people have very high expectations the question really is, what is the timeline of those expectations? Because everyone believes that this brand is going to turn around under the new leadership, but is it 3 quarters? Is it 3 years? Like, what is the timeline here? I mean, if you look at some of the companies that he's turned around, they did take a little while longer, but they were very impactful, huge turnarounds, very successful. So, maybe you're willing to hold on for a little bit longer. But this quarter just feels like it just can't be that important unless there's some kind of surprise beat. I think that everyone's kind of expecting not so great numbers, but tell us promises, tell us how great it's going to be. Like, that's, as an investor, that's what I want to hear, because I don't expect great numbers. Now, if they do somehow come out with solid numbers, then I think they can beat to the upside, but I don't see that happening. I think the stock is pretty high right now, and it's all on expectations of future promises. I do think that they'll deliver those promises. My money's on a year from now, we're looking very strong. I think that's the timeline, 4 quarters, something like that. So this may not be the most relevant earnings report that Starbucks has.
Wow, that's a great perspective there. I mean, I will say I popped into Starbucks today and I noticed that the stuff was back, like where you can actually, if you need to add something or stir your coffee, you don't have to ask for something. And one of the things I do like about that is I think that does reduce friction. And I know that one of the things that Brian Nickel wanted to do was reduce that time from getting your order and, just kind of being able to move on to the next customer. If you're constantly asking for stuff from your barista, that slows them down from achieving the next order. And I know Kevin just made the point about some executives out. He brought in some Taco Bell executives, which makes sense. Those are your loyal people, the chief stores officer, the chief store development officer. But Landon, you make a good point about questions about this quarter. For instance, I talked to an analyst earlier today who's neutral on Starbucks because he said it's really unclear what's next for the company. We don't know what margins are going to look like. Is that, does it kind of look murky right now, especially with that data you just showed? I was surprised to see how its performance looks against others.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're leaning negative, but very slightly. We're more on the neutral side. Our earnings score on this one's -10, from -100 to +100. It's -10. I don't see them putting out good numbers, but I also believe that a lot of people expect that to be the case. So I think there's a lot of challenges ahead of them. I think all of the decisions that he's made, as far as bringing back the good coffee, the uplifting community, all of that kind of thing, is going to be positive. I think they've also got some challenges with the size or the complexity of the menu, which leads to slower decision making by the customer, and of course slower processing time for the barista and those making the orders. So they got to figure that out. They've got to fight the too expensive claim. People starting to feel that Starbucks is getting a little too expensive, and some of the competition, like Dutch Bros, is very, very simple. Right, you get on the app, you order it, you drive through, you pick it up. It's they're kind of attacking Starbucks weaknesses, and that's one of LikeFolio loves that company, ticker BROS. That is one of the competition that's really coming for Starbucks, and I think that they're exposing a lot of the things that they're not doing well. But they're moving in the right direction. It's going to take them a little while. The good news is that nobody's got that brand, right? Starbucks brand is unbelievable, super strong, and if they can make these changes that, I think the consumers are clearly calling for and they will appreciate, then that brand is going to be able to hold that #1 spot for them. It's just a question of how long is it going to take. I think as an investor, if you can wait 3-4 quarters, this is a good investment here. And if there's a pullback on this earnings report, I'd recommend picking up shares.
All right, the stock is up year to date. Is under a little bit of pressure today ahead of its earnings. Landon, thanks so much for your data. That was Landon Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio. All right, Kevin, when you think about all